welcome to CFO's digital boardroom discussion on Futuristic CFO, what it takes to make it. So the rapid change in the world has matured the role of CFO so much more today. Factors like technological advancement and specifically solutions in softwares and getting evolved after every few years. Mindset change is happening across the board on how organizations are operating, managing ambiguities. ESG is becoming, more of an integrated part of business strategy. And amidst all of this, CFOs are increasingly expected to be more creative, tech savvy, empathetic, resilient, agile. So, we would want to take a look ahead. And we also wanted to explore that, what would a futuristic CFO be like? What traits make a futuristic CFO? And how is today preparing you or preparing CFOs as futuristic? So I am Vartika Rawat, your host for today, and we have veteran finance leaders joining us from across the country to explore today's topic on futuristic CFO. So please join me in welcoming V. Kumaraswamy, CFO, JK Paper Limited; Rahul Malhotra, CFO, Integrin; Shomit Goyal, Head, Commercial Finance, Home Credit, Philippines; Vikas Kumar Jain, CFO, Hexaware Technologies; Rashmi Mohanty, Group CFO, Clicks Capital; Gaurav Mittal, VP, Finance and Accounts, Varuna Integrated Logistics; Rajesh Goyal, Sales Consulting Director, ERPM, Oracle India. Thank you all for being here with us today. So without any further ado, let me put the first question to our panel. What are the skill sets that make a futuristic CFO? So let's start with Mr. Kumaraswamy.
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, before you get into this, what are the qualities, etc., I think 2 or 3 key changes which is happening is the information asymmetries have collapsed very drastically in the last about a decade or so. It has been collapsing, but it's collapsed and virtually become non-existent now. Anybody can have any information at the same cost, at the same time, etc. Second, the significant thing which has happened is that the cost of computing is becoming almost near zero now. Storage costs have come down drastically, as well as the speed of computing, etc., has evolved very much, and the pace of evolution has become faster and faster. In fact, obviously on the other side is the only thing which is changing faster than even technology is SEBI regulations, which obviously CFOs also need to be aware of. I would think that 2-3 things which should make a CFO futuristic is he has to be compliance oriented. Obviously, there's no escape route. All the stakeholders' expectations as well as multiple rules, regulations will have to be complied with. He has to be a master communicator. He has to be at the front end of marketing the company wherever the stakeholders are, like investors or companies, credit rating agencies, or banks, etc. He has to be at the forefront of communications, and of course he has to be IT savvy in the sense that not just conversant with the current what is happening, but reading a little into the future as to what is going to happen, how one can build a sustainable competitive advantage, cost competitiveness, or future ready organizations, etc. There also he has to be a business partner with the business. I think these are the 2-3 qualities which are foremost for his success.
All right, sir. Mr. Malhotra, what about you? What according to you are the skill sets of a futuristic CFO?
Thanks, Vartika, and hi everyone. I think Mr. Kumaraswamy has laid out some of the key qualities. I think just to add to what he said, one other quality that the futuristic CFOs are changing in themselves, and all of us are looking into it, is how do we engage with our customers in our organizations a lot more than we used to. Traditionally, CFOs were more of number crunchers, accounting gatekeepers, and our job was to ensure that the cost is, we are compliant with the rules and regulations, and we are managing costs. But I think now the mindset of futuristic CFOs have to be growth oriented and not just cost oriented. You need to maintain the cost equation, but at the same time have a keen focus on how do we grow the organization, how do we get more customers, What are the various pricing models that we can evolve to get more revenue? How do we can help our customers in making their cost benefit analysis even more lucrative for them? So I think having this quality of customer engagement is very critical now for all the CFOs, because they have to work in tandem with the CEO in ensuring growth of the organization and just not maintaining the balance sheet or the profit and loss account. So I think I'll add this to what Mr. Kumaraswamy said, that customer engagement is one critical aspect of a futuristic CFO vertical.
So compliance oriented, master communicator, and front end of marketing. And as Mr. Malhotra added, engage with customers more, and growth oriented more than cost oriented. So on that note, Mr. Goyal, what about you? What would you add in the skills?
Yeah. Thanks, Vartika. So just to add one more dimension to it, right? We are living in an age and world where we are drunk with choices, right? And with choices come trade-offs. Personally, right, in last 18 months, I have come with trade-offs at all possible levels, right? In my organization, there is a constant battle between growth and risk. There are constant trade-offs between P&L versus balance sheet. There is a constant tiff between various lines of P&L, right? Revenue versus expenses. And then there is this magical trade-off which continues between these eye-popping DAOs and MAOs versus a sustainable, growing, positive client economics. And I'm sure my fellow panelists would agree that, again, in today's age and world, it's impossible to have it all, right? We really need to choose one, we need to prioritize one. And that's where I believe the quality of a futuristic CFO comes into play, wherein he or she is able to marry tactical with strategy. And when I say tactical, right, it's all about data-driven, tech-led approach. So marry tactical with strategy and take quick, intelligent and informed decisions, right? And here the essence is quick, right? We really need to be nimble and agile in terms of decision taking. So to me, I think it's all about a CFO who is able to take these quick decisions, quick trade-offs, right? Ensuring a happy alliance between tactical and strategy. That to me is going to graduate today's chief financial officer to tomorrow's chief future officer. So that's my take on it.
Chief future officer, exactly. So Mr. Jain, what about you? What do you think?
So my fellow colleagues have spoken a lot in terms of how a futuristic CFO should look like, and I agree to all of those. But I'm going to take more softer aspects of the skill sets, which I think is extremely important. And I'll touch base upon two. The first one is being adaptable. Now, it's a misquoted from a Charles Darwin theory, not written by him directly, but it is still relevant, where it said that the strongest of the species don't survive, the most intelligent don't survive. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change, they survive, right? And it's relevant in all our businesses that we do. There are new business models which are coming up. There is one survey which basically says that in a decade from now, 80% of the rules which are going to be done don't even exist today. So that's the pace of change. I mean, it's fast, it's evolving, it's the fastest the human mankind has ever seen, but it is going to seem like the slowest in the times to come. So how do you create an organization which is very, very adaptable? And pandemic actually taught us that. If you think, nobody could have imagined that, how will you deal with a situation where everything is going to come to a halt on a global basis? And the organizations which survived or did the best and have come out flying colors are the ones which were most adaptable. The industry wise performance would have been different, but even within the industry, not all the companies perform the same. It's like a K curve. Few companies which have gone on a massive growth trajectory, there are other companies which are struggling. The ones which were adaptable are the ones which are performing the best. So I think a CFO has a big role to play, not only within the finance organization, but with a larger organization working with the marketing team, the sales team, the CEO, the HR team, in terms of creating an organization which is adaptable. The second one is in terms of talent gaps. Again, I go by the numbers, being a finance guy, that there was a study which was done by McKinsey, which said that 44% of the organizations, 44% of the talent gap that a finance team need right now are not existing. And in 5 years from now, that number is going to be 80% plus. Now, people can debate about those numbers. The fact of the matter is, directionally, we are heading towards that. And there are multiple ways of filling those in. But how do you create an environment where actually these talent gaps are basically getting closed, because you can't be relying on just external factors to fill that in. So I'll talk about, in addition to everything else, being adaptable, creating the talent gap. The last but not the least is go beyond KPIs. Historically, we have always been linked to KPIs to measure performance, which are always backward looking. What was the sales for last month? What was the margins for the last month? Actually go for the drivers which drive those KPIs and start focusing on them. So one perfect example would be customer satisfaction actually improve brand perception. Brand leads to customer retention and referral rates, which lead to increased revenue and profitability. So should we somehow come up with metrics which is actually going to measure customer satisfaction? So you are focusing on KPDs, which is key performance drivers, instead of KPIs, which is backward looking.
All right. Very valid point, sir. In fact, the point of talent gap is something that we are going to touch again in our conversation. So I'll go to Ms. Mohanty. What are your views? What do you think that the skill sets of a futuristic CFO should be?
I think every other panel member has already kind of said what are the skills that are required in a CFO in the post-pandemic, in a rapidly changing world. And somehow, to me, all of that looks like you need somebody who needs to have, I don't know, 10 hands and 20 feet to kind of get all of that work done. But that's the truth. The role of a CFO in an organization has changed drastically in the last few years. From being a person in the boardroom who was just doing a post facto reporting and telling people what they had done, the roles now changed to have a seat in the boardroom to say, how do we get, how do we move from here? The biggest challenge that these CFOs have, and I'm not saying it isn't there for the business heads as well, is to be able to um, move along, is to be able to innovate, is to be able to use technology for the future. And in most cases, sometimes we don't even have the future visible to us. You're just problem solving on the go. And to me, that particular skill set, to be able to step into the shoes of the respective CXO in an organization and help him or her go through those challenges, as we can as and continue to steer the organization towards a great future, is the biggest thing that a CFO has to do today. So, for example, in the NBFC sector last year when COVID happened, collections was a big issue for all NBFCs. Now, how does a CFO step in, help the collections head with data, helping them stitch things together along with technology so that you could have digital collections, was a very key and an important role for every CFO in an NBFC. So I guess that role is now more about saying, how do we lead the organization from here to future? But at the same time, being agile, being flexible, being able to problem solve on the go, and have the knowledge of the necessary tools that are required to get there. That entire knowledge is very critical for a CFO today.
Right, right. Very valid point. The CFO has to juggle between amongst a lot of hats, and problem solving hat is something which is very important. And how to lead from here to the future is a key question, I think, that CFOs have to deal with going forward. Valid points, Ms. Mohanty. I'll come to Mr. Mittal. What do you have to add?
Yeah, thanks, Vartika, for having me on this panel. And the fellow panelists has already summarized the entire discussion beautifully. But one thing I would like to add here is that this is the age of disruptions we are living in. Be it digitalization, be it the way the customer behavior is getting changes, the commodity market is behaving, the share market is active with the surplus liquidity. So this is the area when every CFO must be one step ahead of its competitors on the market and always look for the kind of disruption which is there. Because if there is not one, then it is going to be hit anytime soon. So in my view, it is the disruption monitoring using the artificial intelligence for the analysis are going to be the future for any CFO, which will help him to analyze the things which will best suit the industry and the company he is supporting with. Similarly, it's no more a advisor to the board. It's more of a like a mentor sometimes. So this is the age where CFO role is very wide in a sense. He is the one who holds the understanding of finance and accounts. He holds the understanding of commodity markets, share markets, and besides that, he's expected to know the business also to the level of CEO. So he's virtually expected to know every aspect of the business a company is doing. So when a person is supposed to know all these things, his role shifted from a simple and advisor, business advisor to a mentor. So that is my view, take on CFO, that how I look this for myself and for my fellow CFO in the coming year, 2 to 3 years down the line.
Right, right, sir. Managing ambiguity, as I said before, is actually very critical for CFOs. And as you've said, that disruption monitoring is something which is important. And, from the responses that I've heard so far from the CFOs, it looks like, as it is popularly said, that, CFO's role is more of a crystal gazer. So, looking at the future and planning. So on that note, I'll come to Mr. Goyal. Mr. Goyal, what are your views here?
Yeah, basically, from Oracle, we have been interacting with various STM organizations and the panelists also. Some of our panelists are also our customers. So what we have seen is many of the CFOs are now not only doing the day-to-day activity of managing the financials and the core activities they are supposed to, but they are also part of the change that is happening in the industry all around, right? So every organization is looking at being agile, being nimble, able to be in a kind of always future ready, and they're kind of becoming a trusted advisor to their CX, the CTOs and other organizations. How do they adopt technology in the business processes? They're now becoming not only a financial owners, but they're also expanding horizon. Like they're talking about how the entire CPQ to the entire contract life cycle with the financial would happen, or maybe how the contract to cash process could be implemented in the best way forward, so that organization become very nimble, future ready, and they're able to adopt change. Like we had panelists talking about how people can work from home, or people when they are not able to connect to the on-prem servers and so on during the pandemic, how they were able to run the businesses. So there's a kind of shift that we're seeing, and the role of CFOs greatly changed. And this, as from Oracle's point of view, I see many of my counterpart and my colleagues who are working. There's a major change in the way they were interacting with the system earlier with the on-prem servers, and now with the cloud technologies, I think it's a new way of interacting itself with the systems here.
Thank you so much. Now that, we've laid down this skill set for futuristic CFO, I would want to explore more here, and I will come to Ms. Mohanty and I'll ask her that, she touched upon very valid point, which one point really stood out was that, how to lead from here to the future. And on that note, I'll ask you that, do you see the term futuristic CFO in sync with the responsibilities that CFOs are handling today? Or do you think that it's just an exaggerated term?
I think all of what has been said so far just is proof enough that the CFO's job has become futuristic. From a role which was, as we said earlier, more as a compliance and a governance, a gatekeeper, a controller or a custodian of the budget. I think the roles completely changed. They have to wear different hats. And as I said earlier, sometimes you're not even sure as to, you start a journey and you're not even sure as to where you'll finally land up. And therefore, unless and until you are like 2, 3 steps, 10 steps ahead of what's happening in the market today, and you don't spot the trends, you will get left behind. You'll get left behind as an individual, and your organization will get left behind in terms of what the other peers are doing. So I don't think the term futuristic CFO is an exaggeration. I think the kind of the expectations that an organization, the other CXOs, the board has of the CFO today definitely puts on a lot of pressure on the CFOs today to be thinking 10 steps ahead. They have to wear a technology hat, they have to be risk managers, they definitely need to have, as I said, spot the trend. So definitely need to be able to look at data, analyze, and I'm going to throw some big words like predictive analytics, etc. But that's the need of the hour. That's what CFOs are supposed to be doing. They have to run scenarios, especially post pandemic. Nobody ever knew pandemic would come and disrupt the market in the way it did. And while there may not be any other pandemic, and I'm just keeping my fingers crossed on that one, but each and every head of finance, every CFO is now being asked to test our business models for any other kind of a disruption that may happen. And therefore, I guess they have to look in the future, Vartika, today and be able to say that they have the knowledge, they have the skill set, they have the people, and they have all other tools that are required for them to be able to steer the organization from where they are today to a path of growth, to make them pioneers in the sector that they are in.
Very articulate on that point, ma'am.
And Vartika, just to add to what Rashmi mentioned, right, around
Yes, Mr.
forecasting,
Yes.
if you ask me in our organization, right, from a CFO standpoint, what is the single biggest mandate from our CEO, right, is to have a forward-looking agile forecasting model that can
Yes.
churn out projections on a real-time basis.
Very
No
true.
one has patience to wait for these Excels to take like days and weeks to get to the numbers. No one has that patience now, right? So the idea is to have very, very flexible models with periodic stress testing. That's the need of the hour. And one other big change which has happened along with this is, at least that's what I see in our organization, right? No one is gunning for 100% accuracy. As long as the models are predicting something which is directionally correct, it allows the management to take the right decisions. We are okay with it. So that's one tectonic shift which has happened from a mindset perspective. But overall, yes, forecasting is the single biggest mandate that we have from our management. So yeah, that's how the things have evolved, and that's what we are prepping for.
So
All
true.
right. I think one of the most challenging tasks. On that note, I'll come to Mr. Malhotra, who's the CFO of Integra, a company that provides legal, business, and research support to businesses. 2020 and 2021 were the years of uncertainty and challenges never seen before. But CFOs rose to those challenges successfully. And now they are the business partner in their organization. So, how do you see this partnership?
So, I mean, we all have heard the term, it takes two to tango. And I think that term or that phrase is most pertinent and more relevant in today's environment because the CFOs need to dance together with the CEO in all decisions, in all aspects of the organization, right? You would see more and more CFOs are taking a broader role of heading IT. Along with the traditional CFO function, they're also heading IT function. They're heading the facilities and admin function. They are becoming the whole soul of the support organization because the CFOs understand the data much more than anybody else in the organization. They are the custodians of the data, and data is, as we all know, is the new oil in today's environment, right? The kind of insight that we can derive from that data is unparalleled, and that's where the role of CFOs come in. So it's not that people are the people in the organization are looking for those who can help them understand the challenges your operating folks are facing or the CEO is facing or the sales organization is facing. If the CFO can depict that kind of knowledge and that kind of understanding that guys, I understand what's happening in the market or with the customers, what are the pain points of the customers, maybe they need some cash upfront, how do we structure that into your commercial proposal, maybe they need upfront discount but you can recover the money later on. All these kind of challenges CFOs need to understand and work with the salespeople or the HR people or the CEOs or the CEO or the divisional heads of various business units in the organization to come up with a joint decision. The collaborative approach of the CFOs is becoming very critical. If you are not collaborative and if you're not on the table partnering with them and contributing to the decision making, your function, you will be extinct in the organization. The function will stay, but you will be extinct in the organization. You need to seize the opportunity. You need to be an advisor. You need to be a collaborator. All these nice terms that we used to hear in our management classes are becoming more and more relevant, because if you don't adopt these values, you're not performing your function or performing your duty to the level that people expect you to be. So Vartika, I completely agree that the CFO has to be a business partner. They have to talk the language that the CEO is talking or the customers are talking. You can't just be talking about numbers. You can't be just talking about your cost of capital. You can't be talking about how much capex spend you're doing. All those are relevant KPIs, but you need to be looking from a CEO's perspective on how does it impact the company's growth. Because no matter how profitable you are, if you don't grow the organization, as I said earlier, sooner or later it will show on your bottom line also. So all the financial metrics are important, but with an eye on how the company grows. You need to be a business partner in a way that your colleagues, your peers, your support people have the wow factor for you. That wow factor has to be generated by the CFO on all the decisions, so and ultimately contribute to the betterment of the organization.
Right. Valid point, sir. Mr. Goyal of Home Credit earlier mentioned about the gaps in talent and the skill gaps. So, I would want to put this question to all our panelists at this point, and I would want to ask them, the adoption of technology creates skill gaps in an organization. And these gaps can be filled by either acquiring the right person or, upskilling the existing employees. So do you also see the skill gap in your organization, and how are you trying to fill this gap? So we'll start with Mr. Kumaraswamy.
I think it's a very valid point and a very key challenge in the days of digitization. It has to be a two-pronged strategy. If the acquisition of some talent from outside can be quick and they can adopt themselves into the the company's culture, etc., that will be a very good way forward. But then in a very big organization of 5,000 people, 6,000 people, you can't be replacing everybody. So a mixture of training as well as a mixture of outside acquisition is what is going to pay off. And training also has to be selective. You can't train all the people in all the terms, procedures, new technologies, and new skills, etc. You got to be very selective. Maybe people who are at the top, who are going to drive the change, they need a little bit of futuristic training, not only making them comfortable with implementation, what is being sought to be implemented by way of digitization, but even ahead, 2-3 years ahead, or what is the emerging technologies, how do we this one, so that they can read the future signals and start designing the change program for the company. A vast majority of middle managers, you may be wanting to train them in the proposed changes, etc. And the rest of them, you train them only for the tasks which they're going to perform. So that way you optimize the cost as well as don't create too much of confusion or too much of disturbance to the existing people. I think it's a mix of things. It can't be a straitjacket approach.
Right. So, and how are you seeing this mix in your organization?
Our mix in organization is we have taken a few people from outside. In fact, the newer designations, people like data scientists, artificial intelligence people, etc. A traditional organization like ours didn't carry it for the last 50 years, 60 years or something. They are new in the market but essential. So you go for outside talent in those areas. But many of the other traditional functions and typical of a manufacturing company or something needed extensive retraining. So retrain them. The balance, as train them along with whatever programs are going to be implemented. What are the changes that we seek to implement? That's the way it has been.
All right. Mr. Goyal, I mean, how are you seeing the skill gap and what are you doing in your organization to fill this gap?
So I'll be personally very quick on this one. It might sound a little crude, but the reality is if we throw peanuts, right, we are going to get monkeys. And we have this debate in our organization where we are saying that let's show generosity gene and get the right people. We are ready to invest in human capital in specific functions like data analytics, right? We are ready to invest there. We are ready to invest in technology. And honestly, I personally, though from a CFO or from a finance head, right, we always had this tendency to push back, right? But in terms of human capital, we are going all gung-ho, right? So it's very important, right, to hire the right people. Cost is secondary from this standpoint. And in terms of internal stuff, right, I think it's very important that we educate the larger group beyond finance and obviously within finance, right? Let me take examples of my own organization. So here, right, we are having monthly town halls on very relevant IT topics, right? Rather, 2 months back, we had a very comprehensive town hall on blockchain. We are discussing issues like AI, ML, Internet of Things, right? Cryptos, right? Rather today in the morning, right, we had a very thorough discussion around what is happening in the world of Facebooks, right? This entire concept of virtual reality. So what I'm trying to say is we really need to have these conversations, right? Just having conversations loudly and frequently really create that mindset shift. And that's what we are actively pursuing.
All right. Mr. Jain, what, I mean, do you see that skill gap in your organization? And what are you doing in your organization to fill that gap?
I work for Hexaware, right? Or I work with Hexaware. And we are an IT services organization of $1 billion revenue. If there is one industry which is seeing the maximum impact on account of talent, it's this industry, because everything my colleagues spoke about, which is data, AI, full stack developers, I think that's the bread and butter for us. That's what we build to our end customers in terms of providing services. Now, you spoke about two things. One is whether you are looking at what we call as hire, train, and deploy. You are hiring resources straight from the colleges, training them on the relevant technologies, and then deploying them on the projects. The second is you are doing lateral hiring. There is another avenue, which is subcontracting. There are times where there are very specific needs, and those needs are temporary in nature for certain aspects of this. I'll go and take it on a subcontracting basis with very niche firm or a boutique firm. So that's what we do. Now, in terms of the internal hiring, in our organization, the total employee base is close to 24,000. So even if we give all the avenues, we see there is a lot of reluctance in terms of the employees not taking up to learning, because they are like, hey, I have already passed out, I have got my professional degree, I don't need to study anymore. But then you are going to be out of the market very soon. And even if you train them on some technology today, that technology might be completely outdated 5 years from now, 3 years from now. So what the company has to do, or what the organization has to do to be relevant, is establish a culture of continuous learning. And this is something which does not happen just overnight or over a year. It happens over a period, at times even over decades, right? And we started on this journey a couple of years back. We are still into that journey. I would say it's completely mature, but we are getting there. Now, there are multiple aspects. I mean, Shomit spoke about the fact that if you have the right talent, pay for it. We are actually doing it from an internal perspective. We have said that the promotions are not going to be based on the number of years of experience, what you have done, but it is going to be linked to the new technical capabilities which are relevant you have acquired. There are incentives which are linked to, hey, it's not only about acquiring that technology. If you have acquired that technology, how are you putting it to play on a day-to-day basis? And being an IT organization, we have a lot of opportunities where it can be a billable opportunity. The moment the engineer or the resource actually makes himself billable on the new technology, because they come with a premium, we come back and say, hey, there is an additional incentive associated with it. So it's a win-win situation. Company is creating a learning culture. Company is rewarding according to performance. and you get paid for your performance, and at the same point of time the company is very relevant in the market because you have the right skill sets which the customer is looking for. So it's hire, train and deploy model, but for it to succeed you need to change a lot of this internally in terms of how are you going to identify which training program an individual has to be trained on. How are you going to incentivize him? How does the employee feel motivated to take that? Because everyone comes back and says, what's in it for me? Why should I study? So creating that awareness. So we are running a program, very successful program, which we call it out as Own Your Game. And we are telling to our employees that you are the one who's on the driver's seat for your own career. You need to own it. If you don't own it, somebody else will drive your bus and you might be offloaded. So that's been very successful for us. But as I said, this is not something which can be done in 3 months. It takes decades in terms of creating that culture. We started a few years back. We are still into that journey.
Right. That's interesting. So, I'll go to Mr. Mittal, and I would want to know what you are doing in your organization and what are the challenges when we talk about skill gaps.
This is one of the few organizations I have worked with. Uh, in fact, the unique one is here is that we have a continuous learning program in place here, where we give the opportunity to the employees not only for the same function but also for the cross function. And we recently started a program named with Udan, where we are creating the future leaders for the organization. So it's an early stage talent finding program where we find the talent. It's a pool of competition within the organization itself, where let's say 100 people are initially nominated by the respective HODs, and out of after taking interviews and discussion and a short examination, some 10 people are shortlisted, which are nurtured for the higher role. So it's a continuous program, and again, we give the employees opportunity to work for the cross-functional role. If it feels that he intend to go on the marketing side, but he is purely working in his career on a finance side, then he passed through a transition phase of uh, 3 to 6 months of a hand-holding process where it can be explored whether he is fit for the marketing, and the HR guides him what areas he is suitable for. So it's we not only employ the people for the purpose of working, but we invest in them, and that they also invest in themselves, which helps them to grow for any kind of role in the organization. So far as the technical or IT part is concerned, we as a being an HOD, I ensured that their necessary skill set gap is being filled, and whatever training is required to ensure that gap, we are inculcating that process.
Miss Mohanty, what has been your experience?
We've actually been, obviously, the technology piece is something which is standard all across technology companies and companies that are today driving their business through technology. And Clicks is a digital retail lender, so obviously we're also dependent on having the right technology team for us to help us drive the business, and that's one area where we've also been struggling. And I think enough's been said about it. I think the two other areas that where we've seen a skill gap in the organization, not so much in the finance function specific, but since now finance goes hand in hand with the other functions in the organization, the two other areas where we're seeing a bit of a skill gap is on analytics and also on product managers. You have salespeople, you have business people who have that business skill set, who have that drive to go get the business. But what's happening also at the same time is that the customer demands are changing. The way, and I'm talking specific to the NBFC sector, the way the point of lending is changing today, where you make a loan to the customer or how that customer applies for a loan is completely changed, and therefore you need people who can look through for solutions which are contemporary, and you're not just dependent on the traditional ways of lending. So I think that's once, and therefore to be able to design products to meet the customer's requirement to and design not because there's a problem statement presented to them, design anticipating what the consumer may want in the future. So you need product managers for that, and I think that's a skill set. And I'm not going to say that there's a defined course that these people do. It's a mindset which is required, and I think that's something that we are kind of right now struggling with. Analytics, I think people have already talked about data sciences, analytics. There are colleges and institutions who are doing such programs, so it is quite easy to go and hire from them and groom them. We do that as well. We hire from universities, graduates who've done specialized courses to fulfill our requirements on the analytics side. It takes time. And then at the senior level, we've also been hiring from outside to bring in mentors, bring in experienced people who can then guide these youngsters to deliver. So for our sector, I think analytics, technology, to be able to design products and solutions, anticipating how the customer is going to reach out to us for a lending solution. I think these three skill sets are very important. We're doing a mix. We're moving people from businesses to look at to being a product manager, people who have the right mindset, hiring from outside, and also offering courses to our own internal team members to acquire some of these skill sets.
Mr. Malhotra, what has been your experience?
I think I agree with what I've heard. Even the finance function is moving away to hire more data analysts or people with analytical, mathematical skill set rather than we used to have MBA finance, chartered accountant. I think those traditional, while those roles are important, though that knowledge, that educational background is important, but I think we are looking for people now who have the technical mindset along with that traditional skill set that we used to have. They could be from IT background who have, or they could be chartered accountants who have done an IT course, or they could be chartered accountants who have done some course in statistical modeling maybe, or data analytics. These peripheral skill sets, I don't use the word peripheral loosely, but I'm saying these additional skill sets are very, very critical now. And those are things that we are looking for. See, as I said, data is the new oil. There is humongous amount of data that is available within the organization, within the products that you're selling, within the P&Ls of each business unit. How to extract the relevant insights, right, with or without technology is critical, and that's why I think this skill set change in hiring for future is very, very important.
So, all of you have put it very, nicely, starting with that, you need the right mix of internal and external resources. I'll move to Rajesh Goyal on this note, and I'll ask him that, the adoption of technology creates skill set gap for your customers as well. And, you've interacted with a lot of, you are interacting with a lot of CFOs. So how do you see your customers filling that gap?
So basically what we see is, as we always have seen, that change is always constant, right? And whenever we see customers adopting new technologies, people who are using on-prem softwares of Oracle moving to a modern age cloud-based solution, we saw that customers having requirement to get newer, the teams of their customers require new skills. How do they manage a new technology and so on? So it's not only the skills they learn, but how they use the skills in day-to-day operations of the current need, how they use the skills to see the future of their business and so on. So that's the kind of change that we always constantly see. And this we have been seeing always when new technology is getting implemented in our customer premises. And for addressing such skill gaps, what Oracle normally is trying to do is make the solution very easy to use, easy to learn, because we have seen that more and more people are now tech savvy, they're IT savvy. All the cost accountants, chartered accountants are themselves much more flexible and comfortable working on laptops and any other tools and technologies that they are exposed to. The learning curve is very fast nowadays. A 1 hour session with that particular person, he's able to do a lot of things. When we compare this with earlier cycles, when around 7 or 8 years back, when we used to train, it would be 1 day session and people would take a lot of time to learn. The learning curve has gone down dramatically. Business users are able to create, for example, in our new cloud-based application, we have features like Oracle Transaction Business Intelligence, where users can pull and drag and create the dashboards, which typically was done by a BI technical expert. Now this is done by the business user themselves. That's the kind of skill gap that used to have that we saw, now it is traditionally done very fast here. Similarly, we have seen that to uptake new technologies, product vendors like Oracle are doing a lot of self-service programs, self-learning programs basically. Earlier, what used to happen is you enroll on a cloud training program or an on-prem training program, and then there's a 5 days course and so on. Now, it's just a self-service program that is available to our customers. Lot of self-service and self-learning how to videos have been posted on Oracle sites or YouTube sites. People just pick up the YouTubes on the mobile phone and see how the things are done, and they are able to ramp up their skill gap quickly on the tools that they are going to work on. Similarly, from product perspective, Oracle also has implemented a kind of guided navigation train, or what we call it as guided learning. So if you log into one of our product, the system will prompt the user to click on a particular region of the screen and then take him to the next level of the process till he reaches the end goal of that particular transaction. So guided learning is something that is coming out very, very fastly in the product that we are releasing. And also, if you notice, we are talking about future technologies, right? So Oracle on cloud is releasing innovations every quarter. Every quarter, you will see a host of 300, 400 new features that is released to your customer. And as a customer, how do you see which feature is very relevant to you, which feature has to be adopted for a particular business model? Maybe it's very important for companies which are in IT services. Maybe the feature is very important for some statutory compliance related to e-invoicing across board, right? So all those features have to be adopted. And how do you adopt those features or the capabilities or innovation is what Oracle has done is we release a detailed step-by-step process guide. Videos are posted to our customers, and it's a given free of cost. There's no charge to use those learning that Oracle is releasing in the product. So those are the capabilities that we normally offer so that our customers can fulfill the skill gaps that we see while adopting new technologies here.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. I would now, come to Mr. Jain, and you told us that you have a program internally in your organization where you're cultivating the talent. You're creating that learning environment. You're giving the steering back to the employees to drive their career, which is motivating them. So I would also want to explore here that today most of the CFOs do not rely on a single time zone, and they have a dedicated plan ahead team which works on scenario planning for days and weeks and months and years. So do you also have such kind of a team that you manage to deal with the future challenges in your organization?
I would break it out in terms of the business aspect of it and then the finance aspect of it. So as I mentioned, we are into the business of technology, and we need to understand one thing, that technological prediction is difficult, if not impossible. You cannot predict which way the technology is going to go. Many things which hit the market become instant success and die down very soon because there is something which comes in and completely wipes it off. I mean, I can take an example of, I don't know how many of you remember, there was a pager services which was launched, and that was very, very relevant. But the moment cell phone came in, that market actually evaporated within days, if not months, right? So technology prediction is extremely difficult. Now in business, we have different teams which are focused on current delivery versus the ones who are building the portfolio for future. But in finance, at the highest level, not the operating level teams, which are different, partnering with the businesses. At the highest level, I have one person where it culminates to who's actually looking into the current business support, but at the same point of time, also is partnering with the businesses in terms of the future investments. And it's extremely important to do so, we feel so, because finance then acts as a common thread which weaves in the present and the future, while also knowing what did not work in the past, because there could be various different groups in the future technologies. So there is one group which is working on something. The finance leader then comes back and says, hey, something similar was tried out by a different group. It did not succeed for ABC, right? So you find that finance is more aware of it from a business perspective than the businesses themselves, because when the organization is very large, it could be very, very diversified. And there are certain common themes which are actually applied when you think about it and work on the future aspects, which act as a guiding principle. So the first and foremost is, hey, is this a one-way street or a two-way street? What I mean by that is, if you make a decision and if it does not work out, can you reverse it out without incurring a significant amount of investment in time, effort, dollars? So if it's a one-way street, it has to go through a lot of rigor before making that decision. But if it's a two-way street, you can go and quickly do that. The second thing is being aware of what's happening in the external market. If you are aware of what's happening in the external market, then you are very adaptable and you can actually make, and this is relevant for every function, whether it is a regulatory change, business environment change, newer business models, they keep on evolving. So how are the teams actually adapting to those? The third is investing in IT. I mean, everyone spoke about the fact that how IT is the most important aspect. But how do you ensure that your IT is actually fungible, which basically means tomorrow, if there is a new business model, then your IT can be changed completely in terms of supporting that newer business model from top to bottom in a very short period of time. And last but not the least, what I had spoken earlier, that what makes the true CFO, in my view, in terms of futuristic CFO, one of the aspects is being adaptable. Hey, you don't know what the future is going to look like. Nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball. If you are able to adapt yourselves to your changing environment, it's guaranteed more often than not that you are going to succeed. But if you are coming with a fixed mindset, it's going to become extremely difficult. So those are the aspects which we try to imbibe in. But to answer your question, business might have various different teams focused on the various time zones. But from a finance perspective, ultimately it rolls up under one because that person can weave in a lot of it.
All right, sir. Valid points. Mr. Kumaraswamy, I would come to you at this point and I'll ask you that, there is also a fact that the digital transformation is not a smooth ride. So, there are challenges inward and outward. So how did you overcome those challenges?
The key challenge is one of perspective. The CEO is constantly looking on how to survive in the future. The marketing guys, wanted to create some products which will be accepted by the customers immediately as well as in the future, which will, stand against the competition, etc. But the same kind of challenges or fears about the future or the expectations or the need to prove may not be there just down the line. So how to get them all on board is one key question that, there's a key challenge as I see. The second challenge, which may not be peculiar to any group, which may be across the group also, is, if some of the failure has happened in some of the systems, okay, or the implementation of some of the technology or something, the doubt is ever pervasive. I mean, it quickly travels to the other new initiatives as well. And people start wondering whether we're all running to remain in the same place or are we going to get ahead or something. So there, some kind of challenges can come within itself, or resistance itself, from within itself, to see whether we are on the right path. I think this is where some of the decisive calls and some of the calls will have to be taken. Obviously, there is a question of aptitude also. I'm finding. I mean, there are some of us who are good at maths and some who are not. And try as you might, you may not be able to wire them differently in their brains to make them mathematically savvy. I think digital also has the same, this one, I think there are some people who are naturally digitally oriented and some who are not. And how to get them all on board and, to get them at least functionally, digitally savvy enough and skilled enough so that they don't stand in the way. The last challenge, of course, is the finding, I mean, there are some people who are technically brilliant. They may not be, digitally brilliant. So how do you get those kinds of combination of people who are good at both things? So these are the kind of key challenges that we have found. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, a combination of training, exposure to programs outside, use cases outside, visits to some of the customers' places who have implemented. In fact, in the last about 6 months, we must have had at least about 6 or 8 lectures by outsiders who have implemented it successfully, who have shared the success with us, or lectures. These are the kinds of things we are doing to overcome this one. But I wouldn't say it is all, all these have solved the problems completely. But we are definitely on a better wicket than we were maybe about a year or so back.
Fair point, sir. You've made certain valid points in your response. I would come to Rajesh Goyal of Oracle India, and I would want to know that we are talking about rapid change. We are talking about things changing very fast, and while it poses a challenge for forecasting as well sometimes. So how do you help your customers achieving the right innovation to match up the continuous change?
Yeah. So basically, as we discussed earlier also, we have seen business requirements keep changing. And because of this change, we see also the customers have to innovate, do digital transformation. In the last pandemic, and recently we have seen that a lot of customers have to move away from the current legacy application to much more agile solution. So that's the need that we see, that the continuous innovation is going to be always there, because it existed in past, it is existing in present, and it will exist in future also. And at Oracle, we also have realized this kind of need of organizations. And we also saw that many of the customers found it very hard to innovate on dated legacy IT systems. And that's where we developed a modern cloud-based solutions. So that our customers can be much more agile, they can innovate faster. An organization which started adopting a solution for last couple of years, we saw them, they have become very nimble. They're able to quickly adopt to a lot of business changes that comes, whether it's more internal or coming from statutory bodies and so on. And with help of such technologies that Oracle has given to our customers, we have seen that they are able to monitor the business continuously. Not only continuously, it is real time nowadays. A global organization like Oracle, which uses the same tool, our management is able to access the data on real time basis in some remote location that they may be there. So that's the kind of work model we are in, where we are working from home and information is available and continuous monitoring of business is possible with the current work environment we are in. That gives a great power to all the organization. They seize business opportunity, and also it will help them to address any future challenges, right? So like we were hearing from some panelists, how quickly we can redo the entire business model in case there is a contingencies or something that has to be done through. And that's where cloud helps our customers here. Similarly, to give time to our customers, a lot of automation is provided. A lot of touchless processing has been given in the solutions, where the customers, teams, or employees who are working on various processes can do away with all the mundane jobs, and all those can be automated, and the repetitive tasks can also be automated. In that case, in that way, we have seen organization improve their operation efficiencies as well. And customers, by implementing modern solutions such as cloud with our embedded digital assistants, capability to have self-service and so on, we see that their employees are able to accomplish more, and they are able to spend less and less time on these mundane jobs and be more productive here. And also, we touched upon this earlier also, right? So innovation is always not going to stop, right? So every quarter, every month, every day, you need this innovation. Now, how to adopt that innovation? Should we spend a lot of time, effort, IT teams coming in, building those innovations for the need of the organization, or it should be pushed by some organizations such as Oracle, right? So that's what Oracle is believing in. We are pushing innovation to our customer every quarter. Customers can quickly have a look at these capabilities that may be currently lagging, or that is required for them in future, and they can quickly adopt those technologies and make the business more agile and have all those changes that they want to have in the processes there. So that's what I wanted to highlight. So that's how customers are achieving this benefit here.
Thank you so much for your input, sir. I feel that digitalization is a continuous process. So, my question now is for Mr. Mittal, and I would want to ask you that, once you've achieved a certain level in your digital transformation journey, how do you navigate challenges that come in your business, after certain level of maturity?
That's a difficult question to answer. Actually, navigating the digitalization process is a continuous process. So, and I would like to add one word here. It is not the digitalization which is a challenge here. It is the artificial intelligence based digitalization which is going to be the future for any industry and any business. Because nowadays a lot of startups are coming which are offering solutions to even a normal shop owner, and he is also able to came on a digital platform which is helping to grow her own business. So for us to compete with those people is really a big challenge. So we have to be real time, pull up our socks and always running towards where we can one step ahead of our competitors. And that is quite possible only when the artificial intelligence based digitalization data system is in place. And you never know, some years down the line, even this artificial intelligence based data system may have some other words. So navigating through it's a continuous process. So that is my take on it. See, there's no clear-cut answer to this.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Goyal, Rajesh Goyal of Oracle India, do you have anything to add here? As Mr. Mittal just said that it's an AI-driven digitalization, but there are other technologies like automation technology and cloud services. So how effectively can CFOs use those to deliver maximum value? Do you have any insight on that?
So basically, as we have been interacting with many of our customers, we see that customers have benefited a lot by adopting some of the modern cloud and machine learning technologies that we talk about. To name a few, we have seen customers adopt the new Oracle Transaction Business Intelligence, which is now embedded with the core transaction systems. So that means the business leaders are now able to analyze the data much more faster for the entire organization on real-time basis. We heard with the panelists about forecasting model. Oracle has released very modern our enterprise performance management, which can do a lot of scenario analysis and do forecasting, which is always up to date with the data that's there in the system. It is having rolling forecast capability and so on. So that kind of capability helps business leaders take data-driven business decisions. That's what we have seen here. And to optimize cost, we have seen organization, even large organizations like Oracle, which is using the same tools of cloud, we have set up various shared service center where we are trying to collate all our resources together in one back office. We have back office teams sitting in the shared service center, processing our employee expense claim or AP invoice processing and so on. And what it means to the organization is to have better control on operations, save cost by optimally using the resources who are doing those kind of activity in a centralized location in the shared service center rather than doing all those in a decentralized model that we have. And also we have seen that organizations use the new age technologies of self-service. So now more and more customers of Oracle or Oracle solution, which are using the cloud-based application, are leveraging the self-service capability like supplier portal, the customer self-service portals that we provide, or employee self-service for various transactions. Now what it means to the finance stakeholder, the finance department here is all that activity that used to get the calls that was attended by the for supply queries or customer asking for the statement of account or for all the invoice copies and so on. All those mundane activities are no more to be done by the finance department or the finance users for here per se. It's all self-service and it's self-driven here. So the respective organization, the supplier and the employees can take that data themselves. That frees up a lot of bandwidth for the finance department, and they're able to do more with the less time, or they can become more productive here. Similarly, capabilities like chatbot, which gives a human touch to the organization, working 24/7 wherever they are. There's a problem in a particular query by a supplier or a particular vendor. Early morning 7 o'clock, you can use those capability to get a response rather than waiting for time 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. when people log in and start working. So that's the kind of change that we see by adopting modern technologies that companies are adopting. Similarly, we have been touching this again and again, is the capability to innovate faster, quicker, and effectively. And that's where cloud is a backbone towards that. And cloud helps organization quickly take those capabilities. And lastly, if I play the hat of a finance officer and finance chief controlling officer here, the end game of organization is to close the book faster. And we have seen that when organization adopt modern enterprise performance solution, use the Oracle Transaction Business Intelligence, the business value of closing the books faster is now coming very quickly. And we have seen this time and time again. Organizations which are in the modern platform are able to close the book faster, do the reconciliation faster, and so on. That's what we see in the market now.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Goyal of Home Credit, I would like to come to you and ask you that, as we've established in our previous conversations that, future CFOs have their sight in the future, and, they would want faster decision making and faster desired outcomes to come, the question is that, do you have any goals and objectives to accelerate the digital transformation in your organization? Or yeah, what about does the CFOs need to have those goals and objectives, and what kind of goals and objectives should there be?
So definitely, let me quickly break this down into two broad buckets. One, as an organization where we as the finance team, right, are partnering big time, is building digital first models for our company, right? So we have geographies where we are investing heavily in marketplace. There are geographies where we are investing big time in building the digital payments ecosystem. So at the end of the day, it's a mobile centric ecosystem that we in Home Credit are building. So we operate in 11 geographies. So we plan to have a single common app, right, which kind of serves customers across all geographies. So that's one single biggest KPI or OKR, as we call it, that we have within finance and as an organization. The other big item here is building future-proof operational processes. That's where we are talking about bots, right, across all the processes, be it collections, be it back-end operations, be it telesales. So it's all about automation there, right? We are also exploring innovative ways of non-voice communication. So from traditional SMSs to the customers, we are getting in touch with the customers via Viber, via WhatsApp, via Facebook. So those kind of changes we are talking about, right? The other thing which I already touched upon, right? Data analytics. Finally, data analytics is a board level agenda in Home Credit, right? So we're talking about data analytics and having those tough conversations around investments when we talk about data analytics as a stream, right? The other thing which I think we already spoke about, right? A lot of work is happening in the area of forecasting. So that's, again, as I mentioned, right, it's the single biggest KPI for us within finance, right? Coming out with these models which can churn out numbers on real-time basis. So that's how we are going about it, Vartika.
All right. So, this has been a really invigorating conversation, and this brings us towards the end of this discussion. And as we close, we would like a short 1 to 2 minutes concluding remarks from all the speakers on what are your key priorities in 2022. So we can start with Mr. Kumaraswamy.
The key priority, sorry to be putting it this way, is how to make the best use of COVID. COVID has created enormous amount of opportunities. There were customers whose other suppliers had failed, or suppliers who were not having other customers because they had moved out of business, etc. This has created a huge opportunities in creating additional sources of sourcing, or additional customers and entry into new markets and new products, etc. As well as newer banks which were running dry of customers, etc. They approach you with newer, better lines, lower rates of interest, etc. It has created a whole lot of new opportunities, and it is going to be important to see how we can harvest all these opportunities for 2022. Apart from, of course, all the social responsibilities of inaugurating all your some of the stakeholders also operate in remote areas. Besides your own employees, their families, etc., whatever responsibilities that you owe them, you carry out. But business-wise, I think this is going to be the biggest challenge of 2022.
All right. Mr. Malhotra, what about you? What are your key priorities for 2022?
Yeah, sure. I'll keep it I'll say a little bit more transactional. For me, the biggest priority with respect to the finance function, one is, how do I eliminate Microsoft Excel from my team? How do I remove spreadsheets? How do I remove all this and use technology better? As Rajesh mentioned, that we have been working with them, and I will continue to work with them and other people in the ecosystem to see how best we can leverage technology. Second, I think more on employee front, on my how do we get more mental well-being for our employees, given what has happened in the last 2 years with work from home. How does that new hybrid work culture How do we invigorate and motivate our employees in this new ecosystem or new normal, I'll say, of working from home, and continue to keep them motivated to do better. So for me, those are the two priorities for 2022.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Shomit Goyal, what about you?
I think I'll keep it very simple, Vartika. I know we talk a lot about thinking 10x, right? For us, the priority is not only think 10x, but it's more about executing 10x, right? We say think out of the box. It's fine to think out of the box, but ultimately someone needs to get into the box, right? So it's all about execution, and solid execution is what we target to do next year. And again, right, we really don't want to go overboard with this fad called as digitization. I'll be very honest to you, in my perception, the to-go model is phygital. It's like a healthy mix of physical and digital, right? So we will go slow, but we will go quick, right? Follow the breadcrumbs, and that's how 2022 is going to be for us.
All right. Mr. Jain, what about you?
I'll be quick. Two aspects. Number one is in terms of data-driven organization. So we are investing heavily on the IT front because we realize from everything that we do, from a demand generation to a market capture to selling on the digital platform, because all our customer base is in outside of India. They used to visit our delivery centers in India, but that has completely stopped with COVID, but we need to continue to get more business. So it's all about getting the whole company more digitally oriented, from sales to marketing to HR to finance to legal to everything. So that's the focus for us, and even in finance function. The second aspect is what we spoke about earlier, right? Which is a key priority for me, is in terms, particularly for the finance function, is in terms of bridging that skill gap. We realize that what we have from a talent perspective is relevant for today, may not be relevant 5 years down the line. So how you start thinking about it and you bridge that talent gap. So we spoke about the hire, train, and deploy kind of a model. It's basically making that successful. As I said, it's not a 1 year journey, it's not a 2 year journey, it's a decade-long journey, and it's continuous process.
Right.
So just go from strength to strength.
All right. Ms. Mohanty, over to you.
I think all of us kind of have a very similar kind of a agenda set for the next year or so. I'll echo whatever has been said, but specific, if I have to add two things, it is really moving out of this wait and watch mode that COVID put us in, to be able to help the business grow and grab the opportunities that this pandemic has presented to us in terms of growth. And then the second is that while at a senior level, here we've talked about all of those things that a CFO is expected to do. I cannot do it on my own. So I think for me, it's also very important to make sure that I take my team along with me, that the team buys into whatever new stuff or the new way of working is, the kind of skill sets that they have to that they need to have, and to be help them and to help them that they make an investment of their time and effort in developing those skill sets, because that's eventually what will help us in getting to do what we talked about here.
Right. Mr. Mittal, what are
Yeah,
your priorities?
like Mr. Jain mentioned about the investment into the digital space, we are also into a logistics space in investing heavily into the digitization of the system. So in the IT segment, we are investing heavily. Having said that, my priorities for FY22 is to ensure that the team across the organization are on board with the new developments are coming up, and we want this organization future ready. So that's the agenda for us for FY22.
All right. So this has been really great. And on behalf of the participants and ETCFO team, I would like to thank all the speakers for sparing their precious time and addressing the queries here. I would also like to thank the webinar attendees for their enthusiastic participation. So please stay connected and do subscribe and join to ETCFO updates every day through our daily newsletter, specially designed for finance professionals. And always send us your thoughts, feedback, and requests, because it is really your feedback that that makes ETCFO tick. And we hope to be back soon with another discussion So thank you all, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Vartika, for
Thank you.
giving us a
Thank
opportunity.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.